So part of my thing is I spend a lot of time talking about sickle cell disease between my nonprofit and managing Kennedy's Care. And one of the things that we're working to with our nonprofit to change in our sickle cell community is specifically trying to help with how people are isolated with the chronic illness and how also specifically how we're told about the illness through a letter. So some of us are told about our illness through a letter in the sickle cell community. For me specifically, I tell the story all the time about how our daughter came home and we were celebrating with new people. You know, you want to meet the new baby. And so we're introducing to the new baby. And on Saturday, my husband goes to the mailbox and checks, and we have a certified letter in our mailbox that says Sickle Cell Disease Association. Like, we don't know why, we don't know what's happening with that. And so I'm constantly like painting this picture for people. It's not the point of this conversation, so I'm just sort of flying through it a little bit, but it's sort of my thing, right? It's my stick. I'm constantly painting the picture of Kennedy being an infant, getting this letter. I'm always trying to paint it in like this vivid color, and I'm consistently talking about her illness. And one of the things that I find for other people or other parents of kids with chronic illnesses, we're always sort of in this space of whatever your starting point was of finding out about your child or your children's illness. Like, it's like at that point, it's like, and go, like, right? Like, we're like doctor's appointments and, you know, all kinds of things, and collaborating with schools and focusing on the illness. And what I have had to do for myself is, yes, I love that work, but I have to remind myself that Kennedy is a whole person, right? And that she's not just the sickle cell disease illness. It's not just a cluster of doctor's appointments. And then even further, I have to remind myself, I'm a whole person. Like, hi, like, yeah, like me. Like, I'm not just this mom of this kid with an illness who knows which parking structure at CS Moss to go to during which time of the day. I'm not like the expert of like, oh no, it's not lunchtime, it's lunch, it's breakfast time, in the cafeteria. Like, I am more than just the illness. And so one of the things that I thought was really important to me, and I guess at Nurse Outreach was like, let's talk about how to be seen as whole people and not just as the caregivers of someone with an illness or some people with an illness, because some of us have multiple children with illnesses, or the child with just an illness. So that's going to be our mission for like this next 56 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to warn you in advance, I do have like an activity for everybody to participate in, but you don't have to turn your camera on. Deal? You can turn your mic on, but you don't have to turn your camera on. Okay? So I'm going to start. Kristen and I are both a part of this group, this care, what is it? A caregivers group that we do. And one of the exercises that I was reminded of is this thing called yes and. Now, I love these kind of things, but I also like them from the perspective of I might be using them out of context. So if you're like a social worker or a licensed professional counselor, yes, and I'm using this exercise out of context. I'm going to tell you that in advance, okay? So here we go. But I like this exercise because it makes me think about things. So here's the exercise. I'm going to start. I'm going to tell you my daughter's name. I'm going to tell you that she has a chronic illness. I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to say, and I'm going to tell you things about her that have nothing to do with her illness. And you have to do the same thing, right? So like, not yes, and we have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Yes, and I'm trying to figure out what her pain medicine is. Like, nope, I'm going to tell you her name. I'm going to tell you her illness. Yes, and I'm going to give you some other information about my whole person. Does that make sense? Nodding heads? Okay, I'm gonna go first. So, hi, I have a daughter named Kennedy. She's diagnosed with sickle cell. Yes. And she's 5 years old. She's excited about going to school this school year for the first time. She loves to play pretend in the pretend kitchen area. And she also loves to cook with me in the mornings on Saturday mornings. See? Who's next?
Okay. I'm Kristen, and I have a 8-year-old son who has a neuromuscular disorder, and he loves Hot Wheels and is about to jump into the screen. And he loves Hot Wheels. And
Welcome to Jurassic World!
And Jurassic World.
Thank you for sharing. I love the dinosaur. Who's next?
Hi, this is Brenda. I have two daughters. The first one is Kensley. She is a post-liver transplant patient, as well as recently being diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And she is an 8-year-old who is full of life and energy and is one of the most social beings on the planet. And she makes friends wherever she goes. My other daughter is Kateri, and she is 5, and she is also a post-liver transplant child. And she broke the mold. She is full of life. She is the most joyful child. She is happy through everything. She never stays mad. And she will find joy in absolutely any situation that you put her in. And she is a very bright light in our world.
Awesome. They sound great. Thank you for sharing.
I guess I can go next. My son is 17 now, and he was diagnosed with polycythemia vera. And so yes, he's got that condition, which he needs treatments every week, but he also plays football and runs track. And he qualified for the Junior Olympics in Texas, and so did his brother, who's 9. So they both play football and track, and it's just a really busy life.
Cool.
Because I'm a single parent, so yeah.
Wow. I was thinking that's really cool for them. That's a lot of scheduling for you.
Yeah, I'm just Uber and this driver, and yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Do we have other caregivers? I know some of these faces are North Star Reach people. So do we have other caregivers on here?
I'm Shelly. I can go next.
Okay.
My son is Ethan. He is 13, and he has cancer and adrenal insufficiency and cerebral palsy. Yes, he has those, but he is the most passionate, loving, unpredictable, compassionate person I probably know. He's a handful, but in a very good way.
Yeah. Those are always the good kind of handfuls.
Yeah, and he's the jokester of the household, so he will always play a prank on you when you least expect it.
Awesome. How old did you say he was? He is
13.
13. Oh yeah. I see Mike, and I think that's it. That doesn't work in Lauren, do you work in North?
Volunteer, but
okay. I'm like, I know I've seen you before.
Yeah.
So I love all of the yes ands, right? I loved how it wasn't even hard. Like we could all think so quickly about yes and the other things that they do, right? They're jokesters, they're the light of your lives, they're track stars, they're future Olympians, they're right, like they love dinosaurs. Like we can think of all these things that they are as well. No, I'm not, because we only have an hour. I'm not going to do this, but I want you to think about this in your own time about who you are, right? Like, hi, I'm Shavonn. I'm the mother of 2 children. One of them has a chronic illness. Yes, and then I'd fill in the blanks with the other things, right? That I love to do. And sometimes even for me, it's hard to fill in those blanks without, like, instantly in my mind, I wanted to go to, and I'm a sickle cell advocate, right? But that's not right. That's not the take it out, throw it away. Like, that's not the assignment, right? So, like, think about what that means for yourself. Because one of my first thought processes when I had to go through this work is I have to lead by example. Right. So if I want to empower my children, and my daughter in this specific example with the chronic illness, of being more than just a person with sickle cell disease, I have to lead by example. So I too had to set some boundaries and some things in place for myself so that I can show her that it's not just all about sickle cell and the sickle cell work that we do, and also maintaining her illness. So one of those things for me was that exercise that I had to do. And I had to work really hard in my ends, being really transparent, not to mention to myself the work. I may have been able to be okay with remembering to take out the daughter, but I had to take out the work, the sickle cell work too. So that's my challenge to you on your own time, to think about for yourself. Yes, and what for yourself. The other thing is that for me, for my work, in seeing the whole person, I had to think about my boundaries, right? Like, I'm very, if you see my phone right now, there's an alarm in my phone for everything. Like, wake up, wake the kids up. It's almost time for breakfast. In 10 minutes, they're going to be late for school. It's time to, the next alarm is it's time to go to school. There's an alarm to pick them up from school. I mean, there's an alarm for everything. Drives everybody in my house crazy, but it works for me. So, oh, I'm Mike. I'm a brother of a former sickle cell disease survivor, and now I get to be a warrior for other sickle cell disease warriors, and as a patient advocate. Sorry for the late reply, no problem. Right? Thank you, Mike. So I had to set up systems for myself to give myself freedom. Does that make sense? Like, I know, I don't know about you guys, but for me, with a child with an illness, like, there's always constantly like a doctor's appointment or something, or if it's not a doctor's appointment, like, if she goes, ouch, I'm like, what, you, pain crisis? What, like, what, you okay? You need some medicine? Heating pad, bath, which, like, it, right? So there's always sort of this space that I'm in. And so what I had to do was, for my own self-care, I had to set boundaries for myself. And I mean simple boundaries. Like, I have to be content with the fact that there's alarms on my phone for everything. And the people in my house have to adjust to the fact that there's going to be a song that's going to go off randomly on my phone for everything, right? The other thing that I do to set my boundaries is I understand that I have anxiety about certain things. For example, with her starting school, I'm worried about if she's going to miss school. There's some statistics about children with sickle cell disease or with other chronic illnesses missing school and falling behind in school. I know that. So my boundary for myself, if she's up to it, there's, in my kids in kindergarten. So all of you warriors who are like people who have like 13-year-olds and 17-year-olds, I salute you. I have it a little bit easier with homework because the homework comes on Monday and it's due by Friday. Now, everything I just told you, do you think her homework is turned in on Friday or earlier? You can put in the chat. You're like, Kristen, you cheated. You know me. Early. It is. It's not, I don't want to paint this picture like on Monday. I'm like, we're doing all of this homework. It's not that, but it is early and it's off my brain. I don't have to think about if she goes into a pain crisis and I have to take her to the hospital. I have to take her to the hospital, that I also then have to help her catch up on homework that she's going to miss, that she missed from that week. So it's early. If I can do it early for her homework, I set that boundary for myself. I already know I'm going to do that early. I set up school systems. The school and I have a relationship. They already know about Kennedy's illness. We've met with teachers. We've done those things. I set those boundaries for her early. Now, the other boundary I set for myself is, if we're not having a sickle cell conversation, then we don't have to talk about sickle cell. For example, this past week, we went to the apple orchard, one of my favorite things to do in the fall. And it was our first field trip. And these parents were, first of all, this wasn't even a conversation I was in. I just overheard the conversation. And these two parents were talking, and this one parent said, oh yes, my child has, and they gave a specific illness. And then the other parent started talking about their illness. Now, question, did I join in the conversation? No, I didn't. Wasn't my conversation. There was no reason at that point in time for me to have to turn around and go, you too? My child's sickle cell disease. Let me tell you about sickle cell. You tell me about your illness. Let's have an illness conversation. They were in a separate conversation. They were talking about whatever they were talking about. I just happened to hear the chronic illness. But at that point in time, I separated and created a boundary for Kennedy, that we were on a field trip. We were going to the apple orchard, and that's who she was going to be, a kindergartner at the apple orchard. Now, did I have heating packs, pain medicine, all kinds of stuff in my toolkit, in my book bag? I won't even ask the question. The answer is yes, right? Yes. Everywhere I go, I have a book bag on. Everybody knows that, right? I have a book bag and it has all of the supplies I need to care for her, but I don't have to talk about it wherever I go. And honestly, it's not that easy to do because it's a part of our lives all the time. I can see like some of you nodding your head, like, yeah, like somehow, like, right? Like we're at the grocery store and the grocery store line is taking a long time and it gets a little chilly and you're like, yeah, I really got to get them out of this grocery store line because with their illness, like they can't be too cold and they can't be too hot. Like somehow, like we're just like, it's not like we're trying to do something, like we're trying to make our children the poster children for this illness, but somehow, right, we end up in a conversation about the illness, but we don't have to be. And so that is a way of helping them be whole people, so that when we got off of that wagon, right, we weren't coming off of the wagon and they were like, oh, it's, because Kennedy has sickle cell, we got to make sure. No, Kennedy was a kid eating an apple at the apple orchard. Does that make sense? The other thing, so that's my thing is, I limit the sick talk, right? So that's one of my other things that I do. If we're not talking about it, I limit the conversations about it. I also limit the talk about her illness around her, right? So like right now, if this was last year, she would be at home with me, but she's not. Sorry, that's a side thing for me that I'm just really happy that I'm not homeschooling this year. But if this was last year, she would be home with me, right? She and I would have a conversation about the fact that I was doing this, that I was going to be talking about her at this conference and why I was going to be using her as an example. But I also realized that when I have other conversations about my family, people say to me, how is Kennedy? How many of us automatically go to the illness? I do. Right? But if I said, right, Monica, how are you? She wouldn't go, well, right now I had a headache and right. But we automatically go to the illness. How is Savannah, my other daughter? I will automatically say to them about what she's doing. She's doing fine. Oh, she just started this lesson. She's doing this. We're thinking about enrolling her in that, yada, 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 yada. She, whatever, right? How is Kennedy? She had a doctor's appointment last week and we just started this new medicine and she had a really good TCD screening and I decided that their how was Kennedy meant how was her health. And I decided I was going to talk about her health. What I find for myself now is someone goes, how is Kennedy? I handle how is Kennedy the same way I handle how is Savannah. How is Kennedy? She's loving school. She's so happy to be back in school. And oh my goodness, they have to pry her away from that kitchen set and something else. Now, the person, because they may know us intimately, may go, how is she feeling? Like, how is her health? No, I'm gonna answer the question. Like, I'm not gonna be like, I'm limiting the sick talk. Like I can't, right? Like I can't tell you how she's doing. No, I'm gonna tell you, but I'm not going to start off with that. Does that make sense? So I try to limit the sick talk from that perspective. So I also, my other thing, and I really only have a couple more things, but I set, am I setting my limits? I set limits for her illness. Now, all of the illnesses that everybody named are huge, right? Like we're not just like dealing with common colds here, right? So I understand, I may not understand your illness specifically and what you specifically have to deal with, but I know it's not easy to do. So for myself, I set limits from the perspective of, I know when we're headed to the hospital. Hi, I'm Shavonn and I'm an over planner, right? So I do that to help I fit myself from feeling like a victim. Yeah, right? That's so true. That's such a good point. I also, not starting with the illness is what she does that same thing. That's awesome. So I have my boundary, my limit. I know when I'm going to the hospital. I already have a hospital bag. I don't have to have this anxiety about what we're going to pack. It's in the car right now, right? I have to remind myself, as I say, it's in the car right now, take out the spring clothes and put in the fall ones. Note to self, but it's in the car, right? I have a bag. Now there might be a couple things I'm going to grab, like my phone charger, things of that nature. But I know 101 fever, hospital. We don't even have to have a discussion with the doctor about it because we've already had a discussion with the doctor about going. So I don't have to have a discussion every time we get to the fever, right? I know when I'm not going. Mommy, you hurt my foot, right? We're not going to the hospital. I got like, I'm not doing that. I also know, mommy, I hurt my foot isn't automatically sickle cell, right? Because Savannah hurt her foot too, right? You stumped your toe when you were running up the stairs. So I know that. So I set these sort of mental boundaries for myself from the beginning, right? So hospital, I think we're probably all experts in our own area of knowing this is when I'm going to the hospital. Here's the other kicker. I set this boundary for myself. When am I canceling my plans? Right? Because it's not all the time. Now, I don't know about your children's illnesses. My child's illness is only curable by a bone marrow transplant. And that bone marrow transplant is very limited. There is not like readily available to everyone. And there's a bunch of different parameters that have to be established in order for her to have this bone marrow transplant. That means that potentially we are doing sickle cell forever. So if I want to be a whole person and I want her to be a whole person, I have to set some boundaries and parameters as to, I don't feel well. Okay. I was going to brunch with my friend. Am I still going? Right. For me, and I won't go through like all of my if this, then that, but I have things for me that establishes, am I still going to go? Am I still going to have my Thursday tea with myself? Right. So that's my Thursday thing is by Thursday, most of the time everybody's homework is done, everybody's happy, please go to bed. And my my husband does, he collects transformers, so he has a transformer call thing he does with his friends whenever somebody gets a new one, which is almost every week. They do that on Thursday. So Thursday is my time. Don't call me, don't press go, don't collect $200, go away. Like, so good night, bye-bye. When will I let her get out of the bed, because she does it, and tell me, but I want to sleep with you? Not on Thursday. Right? Right? So my boundary, because I'm a whole person, I have to set boundaries. And then there's a whole bunch of other clinical reasons why she can't just join me in bed whenever she wants to, but we're not talking about that stuff, right? So, but my boundary is sometimes, depending on the level of pain, depending on if we've done warm baths, heating pads, medicines, and she just needs to be comforted, sometimes I'll give you my Thursday, right? Because I can't just be like, what's Thursday, girl? Like, I'll help you on Friday, right? So sometimes I'll give you my Thursday, but I won't automatically give you my Thursday. So I know that for us with kids with chronic illnesses, the whole idea of like, I was going to brunch, when am I going to go to brunch? I was going to go here. We quite honestly, most of the people I talk to don't necessarily do that a whole lot, right? So like, we don't have a whole lot of people we're going to brunch with and, that kind of stuff, especially now with COVID anyway. But we do, or we should have tea Thursdays or whatever your thing is, like, right? Like, we should have something in the morning rise meditation. I don't know, I'm making this stuff up, but there should be something that we do for ourselves, for our self-care conference. So there should be something that we do for ourselves. So when we have that thing, we set limits and boundaries for when I'm going to give that up. My last thought process, and I love to hear about what other people do, because it sounds like some people are doing some things too, is who's your village, right? And like, no pun intended, like, yes, we formed a nonprofit called Kennedy's Village. And the reason why it was Kennedy's Village is because our idea was that we didn't just want to help Kennedy with sickle cell, we wanted to help the people in her village with sickle cell. So it was Kennedy's Village. But we also understand in our household, we have a personal village. Now, I don't know about you for your chronic illness, but our personal village is small, right? So like, it's not like, and, well, it's decent, I guess. But as it relates to the number of people that are going to watch our children, right, while we're gone, right? The number of people who are, who are going to care for them while we're away from them, that's small for us. But we have it established. Like, we know who's our village, who brings us food at the hospital, right? Who, does these certain things. And for me, I had to take away the moniker of like, I can do it. And there was someone in my life who actually, it was Child Life at Mott, and she said to me, I know you can, but you don't have to. And I was like, right? I didn't have a comeback for her. Like, she was like, do you want me to help you with whatever thing was? And I was like, no, I can do it. And finally she just stopped me and she said that, I know you can, but you don't have to. And so, yes, we can, but what can we give away to people because we don't have to? Like, we don't have to prove anything to anyone, and specifically ourselves. So what can we give away? So I know for us, for our village, there are certain things that people can't do, like they can't handle for us. Like I'm not going to give, our pain medicine to somebody and go, whenever she's having a pain crisis, please just give that to her, right? We're not going to give that away. But what are the things that we can give away sometimes to people in our village? But first, I think we have to really think about who's in our village and allow people in our village for certain things, even if it's not things directly connected to their care, right? So like I'm gonna be I'm pretty spoiled at the hospital. Like at this point, I need to be focused on taking care of her. And I don't want to have to think about what I'm gonna eat. I don't want to have to think about, any of those things. If I left something at home that I need, my expectation is somebody's going to bring it to me. And I had to work to get to that space because I didn't want to inconvenience people. I didn't want to be a whiny baby. This is going to be something we deal with for the rest of our life. So I got to handle it. Suck it up, buttercup. Like those kind of, like those kind of things. But those things really are helpful to me and us in establishing both of us as whole people. Any thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts because that has been my biggest struggle, to just not only to establish the boundaries, but like learning how to build the village or how to ask for help or how to even look for help. Because, like I said, I mentioned I'm a single parent. Like I don't have a lot of family here. I'm foreign, and their father passed away. Their godfather passed away. Like it's just been like one thing after another. Like haven't even had time to recover from one thing. And it's funny you mentioned like, oh, your Thursdays, that's like my favorite day of the week. And everyone's like, why? And I'm like, oh my God, exactly everything you said. I'm like, because the week is almost over. The weekend, like everything's I love Thursdays. So I try to like make that a priority. Or like when you said that the whole like suck it up buttercup, like I've tried to mention or try to explain myself or my son's situation to my own mother, and she's like, well, suck it up, you'll be all right. So it's just like having to find that right support system, because a lot of times like I've and I'm like, I'm screaming for help, I'm begging, like social worker at my doctor. I think Rebecca has been at the child life there. She's been like really, really helpful with getting like Javon's 504 plan. But other than that, like a lot of people just don't want to get bothered with you. I've gotten somewhat of a negative feedback when I have asked for help, and it makes it hard to continue to ask for help, because now you're you're burdening people, you're bothering people. I've already asked 1 or 2 people, I've already sent an email, I've got no answer. Maybe it's me, maybe I'm doing it wrong. So it makes it hard to get out of that mentality of like learning how to ask and continue to bother people. Like, you know what, shit, I need help. I don't care how many times I'm going to bother you. At this point, I'm losing my mind, and I'm losing my Thursday, and I'm losing my sanity, and I'm not going to suck it up, because there is no treatment for my kid's medicine. This is something he has to deal with forever. And you have to teach him how to advocate, because he's almost 18, like I can't keep losing my mind here. Like, so that's been the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that, and I hear what you're saying. And I love the fact that you're just like still fighting for it though, right? Like I'm still going to try to get help. I'm still going to talk to the social worker at the hospital. It's weird. What I learned is that like the social worker at the hospital sometimes will go, what do you need? And I'm thinking like, I don't know. Do you have a list? Like, what? What can you give me? I don't know what to ask you for. And I find that if there's certain things that I will say to the social worker, there's certain things that even she knows of or can navigate that I didn't even think that she could help me with. Right. And so like that is, I know someone I know someone who was telling me about how they use like the Ronald McDonald House at when their child is in the hospital, because it just gives them some time to break away from the everyday, like all of the hospital stuff. So like when I say like I'm spoiled, like that's where people better take care of me, right? So but like there is the Ronald McDonald House, for example, at Mott, they have one, and they use that space sometimes if they're there for a long period of time to like just break away, get away sort of thing. Also, I think sometimes when I was first thinking about this, I was thinking big, like going to lunch with friends. And I quite frankly don't do that a whole lot. But what I had to realize was I had to start off small with my like helping myself to become a whole person. So that's how I started off with tea. I started off with, I didn't even like tea, but like if someone told me that like it's comforting and it's soothing, and so I was like, I'm gonna experiment. I'm gonna try tea. I started like just watching a specific TV show that I watch, on Thursday. And that show was like 30 minutes. Like I started off small, so I don't want anybody to think like I'm out here living my best life, going to brunch and like that's probably like twice a year. But like the thing that you can do that is small, it might seem small, but when it's consistent and you're constantly doing it, it's really helpful as you're trying to advocate for like the bigger things. I hope that makes sense. That's what I found helped me. Brenda, I see your message. You said giving things away to help is really hard. Yeah. And work hard not to make their lives not about their illness. And you don't want to bother other people. You feel like you want to help for a while, but then it's hard to establish true village. I agree. Because I think for people, I think my theory is I think that people in illness, sometimes that people, that's my alarm. I would be picking on my kids right now. I think in illness for people that they can't see. Now, some of our illnesses that we mentioned, people can see them, right? But they don't live with your children, so they can't see them in a consistent basis. So that's what I mean by you can't see them in certain instances. They're gone, they're living their life, they've moved on. I remember people in my village, that's why I said like our village is really small. I remember people who are like, if you need babysitters, let me know. And then I'd ask them to babysit and they tell me how busy they were. And I don't think they understood how hard it was for me to even go through my list of people that I thought would follow all of my requirements of if she has a fever, if this, if that, if this. And they are well intended, but they just don't necessarily get it. And so I agree that part is definitely difficult to do in regards to finding a village. What I also have said to myself is when people think of villages, they think of a lot of people. I would have to say that my village is probably like my core village of who will care for them is 2 people and they live in the same house. So technically that's 1. Right. And then my village of, for some reason, everybody in my village is all hands on deck when we're in the hospital. So I use that as my time to like really get help because they're not all hands on deck when we're not. When she's fine, in air quotes. So I can definitely hear that. And so that's where I go back to for like helping yourself identify as your whole person. I use a lot of the time when they are sleeping. When I was working in the office before COVID consistently, I would take days off work just randomly. Now you guys know some of you know my husband, so I don't want to say this, but also it would also be days where like he would be at work too. Like, like I just want to be by myself, right? So I would take I would use the school, like they're at school and he's at work. And so I would plan a random day off to take time off to. Because I don't have like a bunch of people that are going to be like swapping out. And I don't like to feel like a burden to my one household, right? That's going to like care for my kids. So I don't ask them a whole lot. I try not to ask them a whole lot, but I try to ask them for like, I try to save them for like big things. If that makes sense? So that might be an idea too for some people to, if you're working, to just schedule yourself some time off while they are at these other places, school specifically for some of us, and then take, a couple hours then. Does anybody else have like ideas or thoughts of how they have been able to just sort of secure their whole identity with dealing with an illness?
I can go again because this was really funny for me. If nobody's going, like I mean, it got so bad for a minute, like I said, like because I didn't have a village, I'm like Javon just kept going through the treatments and like it wasn't working. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take time for myself.
Mhm.
And then I went and got tested because I was like, I'm losing my mind. I'm having Alzheimer's. Like the stress got so bad. I was like driving, pulling over because I wouldn't remember where the heck I was going. So like I literally just to calm myself down and to feel better. I'm like, I need to go see a neurologist, So I'm like, do I have Alzheimer's? I'm like, test me for everything. I don't know, bipolar. I was like, schizophrenia. I was like, I don't know. I said, lady, I'm going through it. And everybody keeps telling me, suck it up. I'm like, because your kid looks healthy, but little do they know that he's, you're walking around with his backpack with medicine and like he plays football and runs track. And I'm like, every hit or every run, I'm like, oh my God, is this the time he's going to have a heart attack and die? And you're living with this anxiety your whole life. And it's just like nobody understands. So it's just, yeah, I had to get tested to calm my brain down. I was like, no, I'm fine. Okay. Just breathe. Paint and pour night. I don't know. Some take for yourself while they're at school. But then I try to sign up for like like what I signed up today. So this is amazing. I haven't done this in forever, but every time I sign up, the kid calls because it's not feeling good or it's football. I have to pick them up. So I'm always missing, like we try to set the times and I'm always missing them because it's just me. I have to get them. I have to do it. So they have to remember mom is just her. You know what? I can catch the bus today. I need to give her a break. And that's the boundaries when they come in.
Oh. Well, that's one. Yeah.
Be harsher on those.
That's really cool. The other thing, the other thing that I find that people do, and I have been doing it as well lately, is actually exercising. I know. It's like, girl, didn't I just tell you that I don't have 10 seconds to do? When I started off exercising, it was for 15 minutes. And I used this app. This app had 15 minutes. And I said to myself, I'm going to take 15 minutes for myself. So there's, it's not in this office, it's at my, I am at work, but I have this jar of mustard seeds to remind me about something else in regards to my faith. But when I look at them, I look at how small like one mustard seed is. And I wondered one day, I was like, I wonder how many of these do you need to like change something into mustard? And to change mustard seeds into mustard for 3 people, you needed a tablespoon and a half, and like for easy mustard and some water. And I was like, if all I need to change these small mustard seeds into mustard is a tablespoon of mustard, and I could have it for like 2 people, then I can make a change for myself for 15 minutes to just work out. 7 minutes. There's a 7-minute workout. That's even better. So I think a 7-minute workout could work out. Aromatherapy. I love aromatherapy too. And I don't know how Mike does it, but you can use like a diffuser and have that going just all the time, quite honestly. So I want to make sure that like people aren't like, oh, you're fancy. You make your own candles. oh. Okay, I just learned 2 days ago that mustard seeds really connected mustard seeds really made mustard. This is a whole nother level of like, I make my own candles. Oh, okay. So he uses lavender, warm lavender, and amber. I've never smelled amber before. I gotta try it. So I don't want the perception of like making yourself to be a whole person is this crazy kind of huge thing where like Shavonn's saying, go to brunch, right? Like if we're here, brunch is like, you know, right? Like that's here. But like Brenda's saying, I got 7 minutes. And that's change, right? That's a space where you have 7 minutes. Also, when I work out, I'm not answering a doctor. Listen, the doctor's on, I can get back to you. I got 15, it's 15 minutes. I'm not, unless it's an emergency. I'm not answering an email. I'm not answering a doctor. And at this point during my workout time, my kids also know to leave me alone. Like it's my own time. There's a lady on YouTube. It's called Grow with Joe, I think it is. It's a walking, she walks. And I walked for like 30 minutes one time and burnt like 400 calories. And I was like, I was just over here like doing lunges or whatever those are. Was not as successful as I was like doing these random walk workouts. But it's I need to find it, but I think it's called Girl with Joe. And hers is like 30, she has like 30 minutes. She has other longer ones, but that's an idea. Aromatherapy, fancy, you can make some candles, a 7-minute workout, right? Random TV show. These are all things that like are small that I think help us grow into seeing ourselves. And then the biggest piece is translating that into how to help our kids see themselves beyond their illness. But I love this. Like some of you are I think we're better at doing that for our kids than we are for ourselves, because growing plants. Oh yeah, well, I would have never even come up with that example because you won't find a plant in my house. But growing plants. But I was gonna say, I think we found like what I feel like what's happening is from listening to you guys talk about your kids, I think we're doing better with our kids of seeing them as whole people than we are with ourselves. Because I heard like I said before, I heard like track stars and Junior Olympics and like a bunch of different just things that they actually do beyond their illness. So I think how awesome would it be as we continue to try to establish just taking a little seed of something and making it into something bigger, how that can then translate into something else for them. Stop. I'm so glad you guys were sharing this time with me. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions they'd like to share? I know we're coming up to the end of our time together. Just want to make sure to provide space for those who might want or need it. Yeah, I concur with Mike. Thank you, Shavonn, for sharing your boundaries and practices with us. I know as you were talking even about like I don't have a child with a serious health condition, and I could learn some boundaries from you. So I appreciate you letting me sit in this space and share it with all of you. Because
thank you.
Yeah, I am in awe of all of you parents and caregivers and supporters and warriors. It's a real privilege to work with you all and listen to how you take care of yourself. And I hopefully there are ways that we find at North Star Reach to help support you all. as
Well, you
well.
guys do because you have the support groups
Yes.
that run
Mhm.
throughout the year. And I know they just started back up.
Yes. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
really excited about that. I always, I've, for those who I don't know on screen, I'm Monica. I've worked at North Star Reach for only 3 months, but I've been a part of the North Star Reach family for like nearly a decade, even before we opened the doors. But one thing I have been saying to a lot of our supporters is, I mean, nobody is happy COVID happened. It's a terrible pandemic, but it gave us a silver lining of creating these support systems throughout the year. And we feel really lucky to be able to do so and keep that forever. Like now this, our joke is that there's no off season anymore because there's no off season for our families and our parents. So there's no off season at camp either. Michael Coach Parker is my hype man in the background. I believe Amy will be bringing us all back to the main session, and then I know there's a break and one more gathering before we close for today. But if nobody else has any other questions, feel free to turn your cameras off, get some water, stretch your legs, all that good stuff. And we look forward to spending some more time with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Mike, you can put it in the chat, but like, do you have a candle store or something, or you just make them yourself for yourself? I'm really intrigued that you make candles. Nope, just me. Okay. All right. Now I got it. Now you got me thinking, like, how do you make candles? I gotta like look that up while we're on our break. Thanks,
Well, thank you,
everybody.
Shavonn. It was really helpful to just, what you mentioned about like the parents are having a conversation about the kids at the apple orchard. And like, I have fallen guilty of that. Like, oh my God, but my kid too. And is like trying to just, because you tend to, isolate yourself when you're dealing with all this. And it's
Yeah.
like, you just want to relate and express things. So setting those boundaries is, like I said, that's like a big one that I have to practice harder. Thank you.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm working on joining a conversation that's not about the illness, right? So that day in particular, I was talking to other kids about other parents about some of our other common areas. And that was hard. That was because it would have been easier to join the conversation of the parents with the child with the illness.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you.